Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to Not Your College Life with Lisa Beals. I am your host, Lisa Beals, and this is episode number 44, End of Term, Now What? Here to guide you through that. Okay, so I am Lisa Beals, your host. I am the Midwestern mom / college administrator who's done the college thing myself, put a couple kids through college, and realized that college today is not the college of my era. Universities do not make it easy on you all, right? It's hard enough to raise that teenager into a responsible adult, let alone having to figure out and navigate all of the roadblocks and red tape that the universities put in front of you now. So I'm here to bridge that gap for you so you can instead focus on raising your student, your teenager, into a healthy, productive adult in our society and get to that end goal of empty nester syndrome that you so deserve. Okay? So let's jump into this week's episode, End of Term, Now What? So this week is a bit of a revisit from episode 16, where I talked about end of term. With COVID, it's not entirely different. There are a couple little caveats. So what I want to talk to you about today is end of term and your student's academic standing, what those options are and what they mean, and then the things your student should do depending on how they're assessed at the end of the term. Okay? So first is final grades. I want to make sure you all understand where your student will view their final grades. They will not view their final grades in Blackboard or Canvas or Brightspace. Those are learning management systems. That is not the official reporting. Now, that may end up being the same grade they see in their student portal or on their transcript. That is the official, right? If your student wants to see what their actual grade is for the fall term, they're going to go to their student portal and they're going to look at the link called Final Grades, or they're going to look at the unofficial, or they're going to look at their unofficial transcript. Remember, as a parent, you're going to tell them, send me from the university, send me your official transcript after grades post. That's just an expectation, you guys. It's not doubting. It's not telling them that I don't believe you. This is just protocol, people. Send me your transcript. Okay, so that's where they'll view it. Reasons why their final grade may not match what is reported in the learning management system and what is in the university official grade is, one, there could be a curve, right? So their grade could go up. That would be amazing. That I hear so much relief from students when they're like, oh my gosh, I have a 53%. But when they look at the grade reported, because of the curve, they managed to get a B. So try and talk them off the ledge when they're panicking about their current grade in the learning management system. Faculty may choose to adjust their grades with the curve. And so your student's grade will shift then from the learning management system and what's reported on the official transcript due to a curve. The other reason your student's grade may not match is because your faculty had an error in reporting. And it could be either they fat fingered it or their spreadsheet got off a student or two because someone withdrew and they forgot to adjust their rows. And if that's the case, your student has a job to do. That job is to not email the dean of students. It is not to call the dean of students. It is not to call or email their academic advisor. Their job is to reach out to the instructor of record who entered that grade correctly or incorrectly. That's the only one who's going to know the information to investigate. I recommend your student craft a professional email articulating what the problem is, why they think it's incorrect, and when asking their faculty member when they believe a resolution will be in place. Because an erroneous grade could have a significant ripple effect for your student. I would give that faculty member 2 days tops to respond. If your student has not heard a response from their instructor within 2 business days, then I would reply back, find out who their department head is, and copy the department head. These are actions for your student to take through your coaching and guidance, not for you to take. Okay? It's going to take you longer. It's just like training a new employee. It's going to take longer than to just do it yourself, but they're not going to learn how to handle this themselves. That's our job, is to teach them how to do this. Okay? So that's where they find their grades and why it may not match. Moving on to what those final grades mean. So ideally, your student will have achieved that minimum C average for both semester and overall, which means they will be acknowledged as being on good academic standing. Potentially, your student could qualify for a Dean's List or semester honors, which is even a more elevated GPA at the university. If you're not sure what those thresholds are, it's a simple Google search. If the Googles let you down, you just email me. I'll help you find it so we can determine if your student is eligible, or better yet, have your student email me and I'll help them figure out where to find it and to assess if they're eligible for semester honors and Dean's Lists. Those are big deals, especially in the year of COVID. I'm here to tell you, as much as many of our students are struggling with isolation and remote learning, there is still a healthy number of kids out there that are figuring this out and still rocking it. Now, full disclaimer, that does not mean your students suck or that your parenting sucks if your students are struggling. It is a very real thing for isolation and anxiety, and learning modality could truly inhibit their ability to learn. It's real. And don't fall into the trap of letting your words be misconstrued by your student, or letting your student self-talk tell them that they're less than because they're struggling right now. It's just hard. Okay? So I'm not pointing any fingers, telling anybody that they're less than if they're struggling. It's just the reality of where we're at today. Okay? All right, so there's academic standing of good standing. There's the next one is academic probation or warning. Everybody's going to have their own flavor of it. But this is when your student's semester GPA or their overall GPA, generally it's going to be their semester that kicks in first, is going to be less than that C average. So this is a warning. This is an alert. Student, something is not right here, right? There's personal, professional, pandemic issues that have contributed to this. However, it still had an impact on your academic performance. Please take some time and assess what happened. What do you need to do to move yourself out of academic probation? What resources do you need that the university can provide that you can find for yourself? Little asterisks here. At the end of spring of 2020, many institutions across the country in the U.S. chose not to properly assess academic standing for our students because of the pandemic. So I had roughly, of my 40,000+, I had about 600, no, more than that. 600 are how many would have been academically dropped. That's the next discussion. There were a number that should have been placed on academic probation that we did not because of the pandemic. So if they came into the spring term and they were on academic good standing, we left them there, regardless of what their semester GPA resulted in. Similarly, if they came into it on probation, we left them on probation, regardless of what their semester GPA was. Good, bad, on behalf of the students, only time will tell if that was a good decision. But I tell you that because a student in fall of 2020, when we're assessing their GPA, they could have dug themselves into a bit of a hole that we didn't hold them accountable to in spring. That fall, as a continuation of the pandemic, may not have proven to be the best environment for them to bring that GPA back up. So for me personally, it will be interesting to see what that looks like. And at the time of this recording, it's the week of Thanksgiving. This will be playing after end of term processes. So it's going to be really interesting to me to assess what that change is. And if your student attends a university that put a pin in academic standing in the spring, I'm going to ask you, you and your student really need to pay attention to what the impact is going to be for end of term fall 2020. And then definitely come up with a plan for success for spring 21. Okay, so that's probation. Then we move on to academic drop or dismissal. That is when your students, both overall and semester GPA, are less than that C average, and they came into the semester already on warning. So we've warned you once. You both semester and overall GPA still do not reach that minimum threshold of a 2.0. So as a university, we're going to tell you you need to take some time and reflect. We're not going to allow you to return in the spring. So implications, if your student gets academically dropped or dismissed at the end of the fall 2020 term, is their registration for the future term will have been canceled. It could impact their housing. If they're in university housing, now they won't have a place to live. On the flip side of that, if they're renting an apartment, they're still stuck in a lease for the year and now not eligible to attend classes at that university. They, especially for a student loan repayment could become an issue, especially if your student is academically dropped at the end of a fall term, and theoretically they cannot return until the following fall, because most students have a 6-month grace period before they go into deferment. And if your student is not planning to return until fall, they could exhaust their one and only 6-month deferral that they really would need to hang on to for a deferment post-graduation until they get their feet grounded with a job. So there's an implication to consider. If your student was academically dropped or dismissed, they will then need to work with an academic advisor to consider, do I need to go through the readmission process to get back to the university? What does that look like? What are the things that I need to do to prepare for that? And I will do a future episode just on academic drops that'll kind of drill down even more detail with a drop student, okay? So those are the 3 different academic standings your student could earn at the end of a semester. And then here are 3 things I want your student to consider with your coaching based on what they achieved. So if your student was on probation or got academically dropped, or let's be real, if they just earned a GPA that's less than they and they're able to achieve, I think it's really good and healthy to reflect. How did I get here? Right? If I'm an AB student and I skated by with C's, I probably need to assess what happened. So some of the things to consider would be, was it the instructional modality? And by modality, I mean, was I relegated to online learning? Was it Zoom learning? Was it synchronous or asynchronous? Right? Because that could affect my ability to learn. If I'm just watching recordings and I can't engage real time with my instructor in my class, that could affect my learning. Was there a shift midway through the semester, right? Was I always online, or was I face-to-face and then shifted to online at the end? That could affect a student's ability to be successful. I know at Purdue, some of our classes that were in person, because of COVID capacities, your student may have only been able to attend 1 class a week or 1 class every other week, and the other sessions were logging in virtually. Did that impact their ability to learn? Were they ill? Were they quarantined? Was family ill or quarantined? Was a roommate ill or quarantined? Did any of those contribute to your student's ability to be successful? What pitfalls did they learn? Are they recognizing now about themselves? Study time, discipline, time management, learning style. What pitfalls can they identify that they can work to resolve before going into next term? And then have them evaluate based on what they've learned. Knowing what I know about what spring's going to look like, do I need to change anything as a student? Do I, student, need to change something for spring of 21, knowing what I've just learned about myself this semester? Okay? So once they've done that kind of a self-assessment, now they want to meet with their academic advisor and come up with a plan. That plan could be, I'm on probation, and now that major that I was going to switch into won't take me right now. What do I need to do in the spring to help rebuild my GPA, to allow myself to be seriously considered into that major? Or was that a bad decision altogether, and do I need to evaluate other major choices? Those are conversations that your student could have with their advisor. Do they need to adjust their spring class schedule? This could be because they need to retake a course that they did poorly on. It could be because I failed something and now I'm not going to be able to take that next course in the sequence, so I need to drop that. It could be I've realized that I don't want to go into that major, and so those courses are no longer needed. Let me get rid of those and find something else that is more in line with where I think I'm going now. And your student will not be the only one doing that. So if they are in there trying to make adjustments and there doesn't seem to be space, right? I need that class, but it looks like it's full. Have them just keep checking, because other students are doing the same thing. So there's going to be some movement as students are coming to terms with what the end of fall 2020 meant for them academically. If we're getting closer to semester startup and they're still not seeing seats open up, and they've waitlisted the course and there's no movement on the waitlist, your student should probably first reach out to the department that offers the course to say, I really need this. Are there any opportunities where you might be opening space or letting someone in over the limit? That's one option. The other option is for your student to go back to their academic advisor to say, there's nothing that's going to open up in here for me. What are other options that you can help me find that will still fulfill this degree requirement, but is not exactly this course? Many times academic units have some professional discretion regarding classes that your student needs to take to fulfill requirements, but that's not exactly course A. Sometimes it can be course A or B or C, or sometimes D. Okay? Don't let them lose focus on the big picture when they're just focusing on this one course. All right. The other thing I want them to consider when they're talking to their advisor is summer. Is summer a good thing to consider? Summer could allow them to ease up on their spring course load and spread those credit hours into the summer, still allowing them to complete the necessary credits for that academic year, but spreading that out so that spring is still going to be somewhat of a mess, you guys. Let's be real. Give them a little more breathing room in the spring and delay completing some of those credits in the summer. So things to consider before pushing off into the summer is, first, you got to look at the cost for summer. Some institutions, the credit hours in the summer, it's cost prohibitive to go to that institution. Summer may not have an option in which your student could participate, right? If they're going to move home in the summer and they don't have an online offering, does it make sense? Is there a summer course at home that your student could transfer in and still meet the same requirements, but you're going to save money on room and board? Potentially it could be at a community college near home that would be cheaper, and then just have that course transferred in. Look at that if that's an option. The other thing related to pushing off into summer is if your student in their reflection identified time management and discipline was a problem, freeing up more of their time in the spring could be problematic unless they have solutions in place, checks and balances in place to ensure they're making the most of their time in the spring, right? Studies show students that have more to do, that have to be more disciplined and structured with their time, are much more successful academically than the students who have a lot of free time, right? I'm guilty of it. If I have a few things on my plate for a given day, I will fiddle fart my way around getting those things done and productive because I know it's just a few things. And so I'll get lost down this rabbit hole or I'll get distracted by this. If your student's guilty of that, is really freeing up more of their time in the spring going to help them? It's a really good question for you and your student to talk through. Okay? All right, so it's assessing. One was assessing why they had the GPA they got at the end of the spring. Number 2 was meeting with their academic advisor and talking through next steps. And number 3 then is really considering, do they need to take a semester off to do some personal, professional development, mental health issues, family issues, financial issues? Is a semester away in everyone's best interest? And let's be real. I talked about that whole 6-month deferment window and losing that. But spending $4,000 to $6,000 in tuition alone, that doesn't include housing, that doesn't include meals, that doesn't include textbooks. That's a healthy chunk of change to drop into another semester that your student may or may not be successful in. These are some hard and real conversations to have with your student. If financial aid deferment is an issue, I would strongly encourage your student to seek out counseling with a financial aid consultant. At the school, there's people online that might do a free 20-minute complimentary call that are pros in financial aid information. But find out if they have the potential to submit a hardship appeal to forego that repayment. And we're in a COVID season, so if COVID doesn't give your student the rationale they need to request a forbearance to not go into repayment, I don't know what it takes. So I would strongly encourage some consultation on an appeal on to extend the forbearance of your student loan repayment or your Parent Plus loan repayment. Whatever loans are out there, see what kind of financial or emotional hardship appeals could be submitted to extend that repayment window where they go into repayment. Okay? All right, you guys, there you go. I hope this was helpful. It is not always a great subject to talk about, but it's one you got to talk about. I laugh. This is not funny, but it's so true, right? You or your student will spend more time resisting this conversation. You'll build up more anxiety and stress internally, resisting having this conversation, than the discomfort that you would experience in just sitting down and having the conversation. I'm being real. I think that is a very true statement. So, if you need a poke, if you need a push, if you need some encouragement, if you want an impartial third party to join you in the conversation, y'all, I'll get on Zoom with you and we'll talk about it. Or I'll have the conversation with your student. I'll do a free 20-minute complimentary call with your student. I'll work with them. I'll work with you. It's not as hard as your brain tells you it is. We get our anxiety and everybody's going to die. And in reality, it's a conversation that you and your student will deepen your relationship if you can have that honest conversation and help each other help your student uncover what got them where they're at today. Happy to do that, okay? So email me, lisa@lisabeals.com if you want me to help, or you can just message me on social media. I'm at Not Your College Life with Lisa Beals on Facebook and Instagram. Happy to help you guys. Okay, until next week, you guys, I'll talk to you again soon. Take care.